Podcasters Roundtable, round 151. I hit record this time. All right, so I'm super excited about that. It's the small wins, especially in 2020. Welcome to the Roundtable. Let's just start our discussion. Let's meet the Roundtable. Co-host Dave Jackson, welcome back.
Ray, always glad to be here. Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com.
All right, and returning champ Paul Colligan, welcome back.
Thank you. Paul Colligan, podcast partnership. Just waiting for my t-shirt.
Yeah, does it say podcast partnership on it?
No, I'm waiting for. Don't we get a t-shirt for being on this show? What wasn't there? 6 shows I get the t-shirt on or something.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Paul wasn't supposed to come back, Dave. That was your job. Never let him back on the show.
Slipped through.
Man, you're slipping.
Quality control's always been a problem with me.
Yeah, QA is a big problem here at the Roundtable. New Roundtabler, Amos, welcome.
This is actually my second time.
No way.
Yeah.
You're not on the list as, you know what? It's funny because I always go to the website. I search names. That's amazing. I'm sorry, I don't remember, but do you remember what round you were on? I got to find out now.
That's great. Number? No, I did.
It was a long time ago.
It was 6 or 8 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. We have no.
See, you were just saying the quality control is
it's bad. Clearly lacking.
So I go by Amos, but my name's Anthony Lemos, and you can find me at ritualmisery.com and on Twitter at Ethan Kane.
So he's got that good audio. So it's probably, I subconsciously brought him back because I was like, oh, he's got good audio. So,
well, it didn't start working until about 2 seconds before I joined the call. So
that is appropriately live. Yeah, 100%. I thought Paul froze, but apparently he's still awake too. So
I'm still here.
You can't fall asleep at the beginning, man. It's
just... That's for later in the show.
Yes, save it for 35 minutes in when we're talking about the same thing. Discovery, Dave. No, but let's kick it off. I don't think you don't even want to talk about that, do you?
We can. It's just it was an article, and it seems like everybody is fixated on the quote discovery problem. And this was an article on Medium, and it was 5 ways to fix the podcast discovery problem, of which, like, the first one was realize that it's a problem. And I'm like, that's not really a fix. That's just like, hey, guess what? Embrace the suck. I'm like, that's not really a fix. But he did have one, what I thought was a decent suggestion, and that is be unique. Like, in other words, if you want to make it easy to find you, like, I'm pretty sure there's only one chameleon breeder. I'm pretty sure there's only one,
one chameleon breeder podcast.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
We need a few.
And so I'm going to share my screen here. And
so if you're listening to the audio only version,
right,
there's a good chance to plug youtube.com/podcasters roundtable. Run over, check it out. I do like that we always give some reason to actually view the Roundtable. This is it. I mean, if it wasn't just see Dave, then
so
this is it.
I went to a tool and typed in the phrase encouraging words because, hey, that sounds like a good idea for a podcast. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without scrolling down, all of which, by the way, 3 of those are on Anchor, shows called encouraging words. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't start a show called encouraging words. I'm just here to tell you it's going to be harder to find you when there are 5 shows without scrolling down with the exact same name. So maybe uplifting words or, but to me, I was just like, yeah, that might be part of the problem.
But let's actually, like, because this is, I feel like this is a common problem for a new podcaster because you may just not know, or it may just be your first instinct, whatever it is. But how would we turn that? Amos, if someone came to start a podcast called Encouraging Words and you're like, nobody's ever going to find you because I did one called 4 Dudes in a Basement. And no one ever subscribed to that.
Especially if the author name is Encouraging Words.
Yeah, well, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
My favorite author.
Yeah.
So I've actually had this problem not too long ago with the podcast that I was consulting on, and the podcast was the host wanted to name it something that was already out there in several different forms, And we decided, you know what? Your name itself has some recognition value. Like you've done things outside of podcasting in this particular space that the podcast is going to be. If we put your name on it, people will be able to find it very easily. So it would be Encouraging Words by Amelia Bangladesh, and that really helped her discovery, and it made it very easy to find people, because if you look up her name, there's only one of her, even though there are podcasts with very, very similar names if you took off her name. And that has worked out pretty well. But that only works if you're a distinguished individual in that particular market. If you're not, then you really just the reason it's such a good idea in your head is because it's a good idea and everybody's already had it. So you kind of either whittle it down to something more basic or expound upon it in a way like blow the words up. Like, hey, those are great words. They work well together, but people have already used them. Let's hit thesaurus.com and see what we can come up with.
100%. Synonyms are great tools to distinguish common titles. Dave and Paul are both of you give advice to podcasters. What could you add on to that?
My big one, I'm a big fan of Donald Miller's grunt test. And the grunt test is caveman looks at podcast name, caveman grunt, caveman know what show is about. And I have a client who's perfect because he has, I think, one of my favorite caveman test podcasts ever. And he has one of the worst caveman test podcast ever. It's a show called I Love Marketing. It's a show about marketing. With I Love, it's playful. And if you look at the podcast art, it plays off of the whole I Heart New York thing. Like, it's perfect. You know exactly what the show is about. Encouraging words for who? Encouraging words for white supremacists? Encouraging words for, fans of Obama? Encouraging words for who? Now, the flip side, he has a podcast called Genius Network. Like, is that an arrogant thing? Is that, what is that? What is a Genius Network? The two different shows. So I always tell people grunt test. And, and there's the old classic, sell them what they want, give them what they need. Well, if they don't know what you've got, you're not going to get anywhere. So I always tell people grunt test. The easier the show. Now, you got to be careful because, I have a show called The Podcast Report. And there are a lot of shows called The Podcast Report. And so you have to be careful with the grunt test. You have to cross-reference it, and you go from there.
Did you say there was a lot of shows called The Podcast Report? A lot of shows called that? Really?
Well, if you search the word podcast and report in iTunes, there are a lot of shows that have the word podcast and report in them.
Gotcha.
And so, unfortunately there. Now, I had a client who is running for president, and I had a really interesting campaign. And his name's Ed, and he thought it would be really creative to call his podcast Ed Talks. And never looked at iTunes to see how many Ed Talks there are. Dave, if you want to pull that up, you can get the idea of what the problem is there. But, and again, Ed talks about what? Ed talks about how great he is. Ed talks to white supremacists. I don't know why white supremacists are on my mind right now.
Really example. I think it's just, we're going to get cut out of iTunes completely now.
Exactly.
Well, my big Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Yeah, no problem. You're breaking up.
You are actually breaking up. I don't know if is that me or is that Paul? He actually was.
That's funny.
I'm hearing it as well.
Okay, good.
So big thing grunt test. Dave, what's your advice?
Yeah, well, hold on. I have 2 spin-offs of this because A, I'll forget them, but B, that's good stuff. And I want Dave for a different part here. And he's a co-host. We get to redirect him. Dave, because Amos brought up sort of also made me think of names that are already taken. First of all, I'm not sure podcasters do enough due diligence for both of these topics, right? Before they start.
Yeah, they don't.
Have you run into clients or even people at Libsyn who want to start a show and the literal name already exists? What do you tell them to do? Is there any trouble doing that? How does that work? Does iTunes not let you do that? And I keep saying iTunes.
No, they can. There was the feed way before there were, I think, 2 other ones called the feed. And so no, there's nothing to stop you. I guess if you had a trademark for the name, you could go after them and say, I'm sorry, that's and it's there's a weird the rule is with a trademark, you can't use it if it would cause confusion. And so if you're both podcasts and one is called The Feed and the other one is called The Feed, that would cause confusion. And if you have a trademark, in theory, you could go after them and say, I smite thee that thou takest down your show or something like that. So I just say do a little diligence. But there are people that go, no, I really want this name. And I go, okay, because the domain is gone as well. I don't know if you notice that. No, I have, whatever, edtalks. Yeah, exactly. Nice.
There's a podcast that proudly lists their podcast as at .limo.
.limo, is that what you said?
Yep.
Is it for limousines?
Nope.
So you had me. You almost had me. So close. I was like, genius.
Time management podcast.
Hey, Dave, so what about people who what about when the Podcasters Roundtable shows up and I'm like, yeah, we're kind of the Podcasters Roundtable. Have you guys run into that? When a name, someone else had taken your name.
I had somebody that called it.
I actually did run into this.
It wasn't School of Podcasting, but it was really close.
And the same with the Podcaster Studio.
Yeah.
Now that I recall.
And I kind of just went, hey, you're hitting a little close to home there.
Yep.
And the guy politely said, go pound salt.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, because if you want, we can take this into court. And he was just like, okay, here's the name of my lawyer. And I was like, interesting. So I talked to a lawyer and he kind of explained the cost and fees. And I went, you know what, maybe not this time. And it's just, that's one of the things. That's the problem.
Is there another School of Podcasting? Did this guy go through with it?
No.
Is it cheaper?
It was just a webinar. It was, you can't get much cheaper. I mean, come on, seriously. But it was a webinar he was doing. And it was, I forget the exact name, but it was close. And I was
so I took the same approach, whereas I just approached them and it all went smoothly. I said, again, down to due diligence, right? They hadn't really checked. I don't even recall how I found it. They may have asked me eventually. They checked it. I don't remember what happened. I think, someone probably pointed it out to me. I think it was like a Facebook group or something like that. And they were willing to change. So I find a lot of cases,
yeah, it's just somebody who didn't do anything.
Man, it was very interesting to hear it. In your case, the guy.
Yeah, he was just like, no, go pound salt. And I was like, oh, well, that's one way of handling it, I guess.
Well, then there was a guy who launched this podcast academy for an industry that's never had a podcast academy or an awards show.
Right.
Without ever checking that Podcast Academy was actually a online website for a training company out of Australia.
Yeah. Speaking of not checking names. Yeah.
But it's okay now with FIFA and those kinds of things. But
the current event
you've been tracking this one, Ray?
Yeah, vaguely, yes.
Yeah.
Is it the Wondery stuff?
Yep.
Yeah. CEOs in trouble everywhere. But they're CEOs. It's like comes with the territory, right?
Kind of what you do, right?
For something. I don't know. It reminded me, there was one more thing. So I knew I'd forget, but I was curious about that. Someone already has the name or that you would like to use. Again, making yourself, it always comes back to search, right? And so, I got it. Paul, I think I was going to ask you this on Slack the other day and I never did because I have a podcast coming up that is like the official podcast of a journal or a magazine. And then in that case, like I try not to add podcast anymore, right? That always just seems so janky. But when you're starting a podcast that really the name should be kind of the same as the periodical, what a word that is, feels old. What do you do, right? How do you not slap podcast on the end of it? And to be honest with you, people who aren't in podcasting, so the people who may be hosting these things want to add the name podcast to it, right? So I don't any advice there.
I like the word show.
Yeah. The show is good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's a good synonym. We're back to the thesaurus. Thanks, Amos, for busting out the.
Well, and show's better than radio because a lot of people do radio, but the problem is kids today don't know what radio is.
No.
And so, but there will always be shows.
Yeah.
But,
so that's it. Would you go with the same name as the podcasting magazine?
Yeah.
That the podcasting magazine wanted to start a podcast. Would you just say the podcasting magazine show?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I did.
Is there anybody back to the caveman grunt test? Is there anybody who doesn't know what the podcast magazine show would be about?
Right. I mean, I assume the people who listen to it would also be maybe plugged into the magazine somehow. So that's why it's also important.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing you have to keep in mind is I had somebody contact me and they're like, hey, when I type in the word pivot, my show doesn't come up because my show is about kind of, you're in your 40s or 50s and you're starting your second job, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's the name of your show? And I forget what it was. It was, whatever, boomers, blah, 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 whatever. Nowhere is the word pivot in the name of their show. So I go over to their show titles. Nowhere is the word pivot in any of their titles. And their last name was not like James Pivot. And I was like, I can explain to you why you're not coming up when you type in the word pivot. It's nowhere in your show. Yeah. And I was like, so that's another one.
Optimization there.
Mutual friend of ours, Dave, she had a podcast. She had an episode about keto and women and about the needs of like hormones and all these different things, how it's different for women. It was fascinating. So I tell my wife, yeah, our friend did an episode on keto and women. And Heidi says, well, what should I do? And I go, well, look it up at iTunes, type in keto and her name. And it didn't show up, and what it was the SEO person did everything around the ketogenic diet, not keto. Didn't use the word keto once in title or in description. And it was one of these long 700 word description, but never used the word keto by itself. And so you couldn't find this amazing episode about keto because they didn't use the word keto. They just used the bigger word.
I had somebody wanted to do a show about Nashville and they came up with the name Music City. I go, but do people in Nashville, when they search for something about Nashville, type in Music City? I don't think so. They probably type in Nashville. And he was
kind of first episode. Could you be Music City and then also probably copyright trademark somewhere in there? But could you be that and then do your first episode that you created before you launched, because you have 7 episodes to launch with? could you then your first episode could be going to Nashville or something?
Right.
Like that. Would that solve it?
That or throwing a tagline.
Would that solve it everywhere is the question, right? Because we're not just talking about Apple Podcasts.
But it wouldn't, because just relevance would slowly fade away unless you consistently had something named, with Nashville in the name on a regular basis through your titles.
Yeah.
Google's eventually going to start ignoring it because it's 3 years old. I mean, it's just not going to come up.
Amos is totally right. And but if it is the Music City podcast, working the word Nashville into your title isn't that hard.
Can we subtitle that? I mean, can we do that?
That's what I was going to say.
Music
City, and I forget what it was. Let's say it was Music City Scene, a Nashville, what's going on in Nashville or whatever.
Can you do that? Will that get us kicked out of Apple Podcasts for
you're on the edge right there.
Hitting thin ice.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point of that cutoff though, right? Is to allow you a little bit of leeway, to give you a little bit of something, as long as you're not throwing 50 words in there. But if you want to throw one anchor in there as a subtitle on your show, I don't think anybody really has a problem with that. It's when you start stacking them in there and trying to pack that field in. That's garbage, and everybody knows it, and that's why they put those rules in there.
Yeah.
So. Did Apple pull back on? We freaked out because Apple had sent out that email, like, what was it, a year ago, where they said they're just going to start yanking podcasts that had like dash this or colon that.
Basically. Well, I had somebody that because Apple only searches the title of your show, the title of the episode, and the author field. And this guy thought he would be cute. And for some of his episodes, like one was the author was COVID-19. That's it was the author. And I was like, no.
It's easy to pick off.
And there were a few that he'd just thrown in keywords. And he's like, I have no idea why I got kicked out. And I'm like, I do.
But for normal people, like Amos, would you say put dash Nashville City talk show or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or would you say, well, what would you do with Music City as a title? If you wanted to be known, if you want people, is this like a tourist thing, David, or people?
Yeah, I think he's going to be interviewing musicians in
so it's also
Nashville.
A music show.
Yeah.
So you want to be found for that too, right? Nashville music scene. Could you do that? Music City, Nashville music scene.
I would think so. I think it's when you go like Nashville musicians
with Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, if it doesn't make any sense to me, like if it's just keywords, if it's just Nashville, whatever, country, blah blah blah, it's just words. That's when I think they go, that doesn't even. But if you said like Nashville music scene, Okay.
Actually kind of like this title. I think we created a new show right here. If we want,
Right.
I know nothing about it, but I do. have a great-
Dave,
Yeah.
Dave needs another show.
I'll have to go through my notes and be like, who was the guy doing the Nashville thing?
Right. We just created a show, and people are going to be looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to that guy, Music City.
Well, it's got to be a great show now because everybody's out of work. So that's got to be a fun. Talk about encouraging words. Welcome to the Encouraging Words podcast.
Yeah.
Brought to you by the musicians in Nashville who are all out of work.
It's funny because we have one, not even new roundtable. There's 4 of us here, 3 returning. Actually, we're all returning, but I'm finding guests harder to get, which doesn't make any sense at all. It should be easier. Like everyone just stuck at home. I know you're not going anywhere, so join us. But anyways, just a little ironic twist. Amos, I wanted to wait, did you have something before I throw something else at you?
No.
Okay. No. Roman Castro in the chat asked this question, which I'm pulling up here on the screen. If you're not watching, this is a cool feature for StreamYard. Woo made it, as he made it to the live stream. So now that sports are out, does that create a massive opportunity to grow? And I'm not, I can probably interpret that question. I guess he means your podcast being seen more. Amos, do you guys talk about sports on your podcast? I feel like you do.
We do occasionally. I'm a big 49ers fan. I survived all the rough years, so we do mention it. We also talk about WWE. It's kind of a general nerdy podcast for the most part.
So our sports. So the premise of this question: are sports out? Do you guys not have anything to talk about sports related? Do you still come up with stuff, or have you found, with all that being canceled, is that creating an issue?
Well, I mean, it's not such a topic that we have to hit it all the time. So, gotcha. But even there, I mean, there's still so much sports news, and in fact, sports podcasts have higher listenership now because there's no sports. So it's all the conjecture and the hypothesizing behind the scenes stuff that's going on, and the people that are really into sports are really into that scene, and that's all anybody has time for now because there's no actual news, the virtual draft or whatever. But so I don't know that sports are. I don't know that the absence of sports right now is a long-term trend-setting event for either sports viewing, sports podcasts, or podcasts in general. I think it's really a tepid situation where you don't know how it's going to change in the end. But for right now, just be glad that people are listening more to podcasts.
Yeah, I know. I have a friend of mine that does a Chicago Bulls podcast, and he's never been able to get any of the players on. They got nothing else to do. He's had 3 of them on.
So he's got 3 of them now because they're
fantastic.
So haven't we seen numbers where listening is actually down, as opposed to this? Roman's asking, is it an opportunity to grow? Obviously, that's depends on maybe your niche, but listening's down. We could chat about that. Is that true? I think it's true, right? Are we finding that, Paul? Are we seeing those numbers? Not that it matters.
We actually on the 15th of every month, which was 2 days ago, so I'm very up to date with this. We do reports for all the clients on downloads, consumption, that kind of stuff. Overall, we were up. And and what's really funny, and Daniel brought this up in our Slack group. There are people who published like 3 less episodes in April than they did in March because of COVID. And then they were crying that numbers were down. And so anybody consistent, at least in our group, haven't seen any drop at all.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at all these numbers, I think it's based on what's going on. I could see, in the world of sports podcast, if we're not talking about Monday's game, there might not be an urgency to consume, but there's a lot of comfort in podcasts. Some of the classics I'm going back to because, I want to listen to something right now during this crazy time. And so in what we saw, nothing down. I think Daniel's question about, are people producing less? I would love to see that number. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I do think there is a group of people who listen in the morning, they get in the car, they plug their phone in, and they listen to the rest at work. And a lot of times that counts as 3, despite what the IAB said. And if you're
despite what the IAB says, ooh, I like it. Now we got a little spike in controversy here, which is what we're here about.
This morning I listened to, I like Mac Power User. They did their annual episode with Merlin, and typically that's an episode that I'll probably listen across 4 or 5 segments, but I went for an hour and 15-minute walk today. and I listened to the whole thing from my phone. So it was one IP address hitting Mac Power users.
I'd be a bad host if I didn't open that can a little bit more. Why do you think that's despite IAB, which if anyone doesn't know is basically sort of certified stats, right? It's as close thing as we have as a organization who can certify that you are counting stats correctly, filtering for these type of things. But Paul thinks if you're moving, you're counting more. No? What do you mean? You said despite, you think it's 3 listens. If I start in the morning at my house.
What IAB claims, the promise of IAB is that they understand the listeners, and they understand that we have sometimes people listening to a show across 4 or 5 IP addresses, and they claim to take that into their tracking, and their tracking is the best that we've got,
right?
But the fact of the matter is there's no algorithm that's going to track my consumption patterns down to knowing exactly how many times I listen to the show. There's just too many ways to do this. And so I just don't think IAB is as good as the, premise is. And I think in these times, I think we're seeing some of its issues more than we did in the past. Like, it'd be fun to see, like, I know IAB hit Leo Laporte really hard, and, had a lot of people.
Just me?
What was that? Somebody? Oh, well, IAB hit Leo Laporte really hard. And, now that everybody's working from home, this week in tech, it'll be interesting to see if that has as much of an effect. People listen to the show from one IP address as all the different places they did before. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Something else I wonder about the numbers is, are we seeing an uptick in downloads because people are browsing for podcasts more?
Exactly.
And then not listening because now they've got 40 new podcasts they just found and automatically downloaded the first 3 episodes of each one. And, it's one of the things that I think about on this. It'll be great once this whole COVID-19 thing is over to look back at the trends and how they balanced out and how they flesh out eventually. But I think any conjecture in the middle is just going to be too washy.
Look at this. You know what? You were hiding, Anthony. So around 118, I found you. You didn't come up for Amos. I put you in as Anthony, but you had no goatee. You've got the COVID-19 goatee going.
No, this is the Air Force retirement goatee.
Yeah, but look, I got the same sticker on the boom arm, so I can prove that it's you. I'm looking at it right now. You were the cover image, so I don't know what I'm going to do for a cover image for this one. Oh, man. All right. Well, it's true, folks. It was there. I said I was going to do it. I'm doing my due diligence.
Can you put American Liberty's comment there about cereal?
Yeah, let's do it. I love cereal. I mean,
it's
which kind of cereal?
That's right.
Where is it? American Liberty.
You might have to scroll up a bit.
Fill time with your favorite cereal.
It's going.
Seriously, I want to know
actually, if you want to talk about favorite cereals, Fruity Pebbles just came out with marshmallow Fruity Pebbles.
I wasn't a Lucky Charms guy, so it doesn't
see for me.
I wasn't either, but I always liked the marshmallows, and Fruity Pebbles just is my favorite. So you throw extra marshmallow, like oh goodness, it's delicious. It still takes me exactly 1 sitting to kill a box. Which is why I don't buy it.
Is most people's favorite cereal like the worst cereal you could be eating?
Oh yeah, Tony Flakes, man. Come on,
Frosted Flakes.
I love Frosted Flakes. It's because as soon as you get done with one bowl, and you drink the sugary goodness that is the milk at the bottom,
the Frosted Flakes nectar.
Yeah, the only thing that's left to do is get another bowl.
Frosted Flakes is really awesome because you can actually eat it dry or wet, and it tastes the same. And it's like. It's one of the rare cereals. You can't just grab Lucky Charms and start chomping on them because it doesn't taste right. But
shredded
Frosted
wheat,
Flakes,
shredded wheat with no milk or water is pretty gross.
I'm sorry, I have 6 kids. I know all about cereal.
Want to start a new podcast called Cereal with a C? I think we got it.
Yeah,
it'd
be funny.
Do you want to know? Actually, I think that would actually be a really big podcast. Everyone loves cereal. That's what we call it.
Brought to you by.
Dave, can you go grab the domain? Everyone loves cereal.
Exactly.
Taken. So. Were you asking for this comment, Dave? I don't agree.
That one there, yes. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was saying, hey, if you think about it.
How do you know you know American Liberty then?
I don't. I kind of probably do, but
because the avatar I'm seeing tells me nothing.
Right. But I think she's saying that cereal doesn't pass the grunt test if you think about it.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
But this is why I wanted to bring it up. Let's remember how cereal was launched. It came off. It was a spinoff of This American Life. And then every New York reporter that those guys knew wrote about it. I mean, you could not escape the PR bonanza that was the release of Serial, which got people to listen to it, which then got everybody to go, hey, I think this guy did it. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. And the next thing you know, I had 5 people say, have you heard Serial yet? But that was launched with, it was boom, pow, and the New York Friend Network just went crazy.
You're not Mark Maron. You're not Jimmy Fallon. You didn't come to this with an audience or a whole crew of traditional media promotion behind you. You know, new podcasters want to compare themselves or copy, and by copy I mean be inspired by the 1%, the less than 1%, right? Like you can't do that. You are not coming with an audience. You are not famous. You do not have multi-million dollars behind you for promos. So yeah.
And could Serial have gotten even more if you knew what the show was about? Like Serial Dash, an American crime podcast, you know, or something like that. Forget the whole Apple thing. Could it have done better with a more descriptive name?
It's hard to think it could have done better, but I mean,
I don't know that it could have done better than how it did.
And it was also the rare example where people were, for the first time, sharing something that they may not even know they were sharing a podcast, right? Yeah. Like Dave, you said, people just said, have you heard Serial? They didn't say, have you heard the Serial podcast?
Correct.
Do you know about this podcast? Have you gonna? They just said, are you listening to Serial? That's it. Right. It became the Oprah of podcasts. Like one name. All you had to do was say.
Well, I mean, I don't say like, what did you do this weekend? I don't say, oh, I went and saw the Avengers movie. It's like, I went and saw the Avengers.
Right.
Or I went and saw whatever, the new Trolls movie. Well, actually, I would say the Trolls movie in that case. Now I think about it, because there's multiple ones.
Tough too, right? Because if you could do that with podcasts, like, what'd you do? Oh, hey, have you heard Podcasters Roundtable? Did you hear the last Podcasters Roundtable? You'd have to know what I was talking about. There's no media push behind the fact that people would know what that is or what exists. People are going to follow that up with, oh, it's this podcast for these guys, or these people talk about this, right? So it's tough.
It was parodied on Saturday Night Live, so they did something right.
We've arrived.
I'm lucky enough to have never listened to an episode of Serial.
You and Tim in the chat room. So I still haven't listened to an episode.
I ironically did not. I tried, and it just wasn't like, it's not that it was bad. It just didn't hook me, which is, I mean, I could admit to several popular culture things that I have not seen. I would lose lots of cards, so they say. Like I lose my guy card if I told you some of the stuff that I have not watched.
Well, but I've always been the type of person that once people tell me I have to watch something or listen to something, I like mentally blacklist it and I just won't. Yeah. But if I'm going to listen to something that's going to cause controversy that I'm never going to get a genuine answer for, I'm going to stick with my my pyramid conspiracies, you know? So
look here. So because controversy and outrage, because all this stuff just drives people. The people can't not comment. I'm going to blow up our YouTube channel. I'm going to just throw myself under the bus. It's going to work. I'm telling you. I have not seen The Godfather. Okay? I haven't seen it. All right.
What are you talking about?
Yes. Wow. So here's the problem. You
ever had teeth full of
family?
I grew up like as a 90s kid. There were there was a new mob movie like every week. Yeah. Right. So I saw Goodfellas.
And they're all like 4 hours long. That's the other one.
Them all, except, and then it was like my friends were like, "You got to see The Godfather." I was so
and half of them have Robert De Niro.
And 100%,
they're all the same movie.
It was about that. People telling me you have to see it. So hey, there you go. Kill me in the comments.
But saying you never saw The Godfather because every week there's a new mob movie is like saying you never saw Star Wars because science fiction's on TV a lot. No, I mean there is a bit of a delta here.
No, I wasn't burnt out. I mean, you're giving all. I'm talking very specific genre. Like, guess what, Paul? I don't want to listen to any more podcasts about podcasting. I'm not listening to your damn podcast report. I'm
Jason
burnt out.
Bryan,
but
Jason Bryan is with you.
He's with me.
He says he hasn't seen it either.
I'm safe because Jason's a tough guy, right? So like, if Jason doesn't lose his,
so
it 100% Amos. It's one of those things. It became resistant because my friends tried to force it on me. They're like, "No, sit down. We're gonna watch it." I'm like, someday.
Well, that's half the reason I was not. I don't know if it's half the reason, but a big chunk of the reason why I didn't think the whole Tiger King was that great is everybody was talking about it. And I got into like episode 2 and I was like, this is just stupid people behaving badly. And I'm like, I have to watch another 4 episodes of this. I'm like, ugh.
So is there ultimately there's no such thing as bad press because
Right.
these are smash hits that we're talking about, right? So
Exactly.
our podcast, we would not be disappointed with a number of people saying, I'm not doing it.
On that same token, though, there's a lesson to be learned there that if you have that friend that doesn't listen to podcasts and you're constantly throwing ideas at him, trying to get the spaghetti to stick to the wall, it's going to create a resistance eventually. If they don't I guess it depends on the person type, but that's my experience with it is if I try to my podcast or other podcasts or whatever, if I say it too often to the same person, they're eventually just gonna be like, that's dumb and I'm not gonna do it.
100%.
So,
I think my wife was like that actually. I used to, because I've been around the space forever and I was like podcast. And all I was talking to her was like, I'm not interested because he doesn't shut up.
that's exactly what happened to my
Really,
wife.
that's what they're doing on this. And when he goes into the garage, they just never shut up. So why would I listen to that? Right? So, but she became hooked. She's super hooked. And and I think it's probably after I probably left her alone about it.
Yeah, my wife didn't like podcasting. I've been doing it since 2014, and she didn't like it until I retired from the Air Force and became a freelance producer and editor and started bringing in actual money.
She's like, oh, you make money with that.
Now she's like, oh, okay, I guess you can podcast.
She didn't like your podcast. So.
Yeah, well, she was on my podcast and she didn't like it.
That's a tough crowd.
Yeah.
Hey, so all right, we have another story here. When I say another, I don't think we've covered one, but that's why I love this show. We don't need stories. Anthony, you have 2 in here. No commuting, no problem. I feel like we kind of talked about it. Not really. Podcast revenue continues to grow. So anything new there? Or did we cover it?
It's really kind of we pretty much covered it all. Despite everyone saying that people don't have jobs right now, so the revenue across the board is going down, everybody's still projecting. I don't say everybody, but there are several projections that ad revenue in podcasts is going to be a positive 20% or so by the end of the year. And I don't know. I'm a skeptic, so for me, it's like, oh, podcast revenue, ad revenue stayed the same as last year. Good for us, But yeah, it's. There's a lot of people saying this is going to be going up, and I think a lot of it really is hype, but I'm not an economist, so.
Anyone want anything else to add? Or
it's interesting that some reports are saying listening is going down, but revenue is going up, and I'm like, so that's.
Well,
but
right.
I think the number that's going to go down. This is my prediction here in April. By about 6 months from now, you're going to see the average number of downloads that Rob talks about. Like for that, I think now it's like 140 something or whatever that's going to nosedive, because the thing that's really surprised me, and I'm not sure, I'd have to ask the Robs, but I swear we're getting more people signing up at Libsyn than usual. I mean, we get a ton in January. I mean, we always get new people, but it's ticket volume is definitely increased in the last month.
You think more people are going to create than listen?
Create, yeah. And so when that happens, when that happens, you end up with people with their first episode. So they're, if you count, Cousin Earl, they've got 7 downloads for that first episode. Well, that's going to bring that total number of, the average number of listeners per episode is going to go down, because you've got a boatload of people that are getting 10, 12, 11, 22 downloads for that first episode, and the second one or the third one.
Let me ask you guys this, though, because we do have all these people at home, and we do seemingly have more people trying to figure the space out and come in the space, and they have time to share their stories and their visions and their ideas. What are the chances that we're going to get some revolutionary versus evolutionary new ideas and groundswell projects and grassroots projects coming out of this whole COVID thing, and something to surprise us? And really, I mean, you're going to cull the herd eventually, but what are the chances we're going to get a couple really great standouts that are just now getting into podcasting because they just now have the time?
I've been waiting to see that for like 15 years. I want to see someone who's not biased by growing up watching TV or listening to radio and create something that we haven't really seen or heard before. I think we've seen that, here and there, but I am convinced that there are some amazing movies being made right now. Imagine the drone shot you get over in NYC with empty streets. You know how much you have to pay for that normally? Like, go up at Los Angeles and get an empty freeway. There's amazing B-roll being shot right now.
Yeah. There's
It's a
B-roll
good
being
point.
shot right now. It's going to be used for the next 20 years.
Or people are gonna, you're gonna have like a Blair Witch thing where people are stuck in their house, and you know what I mean. It's something like that. It's definitely being
Yeah.
filmed while we're talking. I'm curious. Is this creating creators? I mean, which you're kind of saying as well,
Mhm.
right? Like, you have an article here where Pineapple Street is telling kids to make a podcast or something like.
Yep.
Which we can-
They're encouraged to create their own podcast by telling people about their day. And it seems fairly innocuous because, I mean, everybody can tell about the day. That's how Facebook and Twitter originally started getting
Dear
people on there. Yeah, exactly. But what it does is it starts encouraging kids to get into podcasting early, get them on the microphone, get them in front of the webcam even, and start forming ideas for shows. And I think projects like this Stuck at Home project are going to make it to where podcasting in 5 or 10 years from right now, from this period right now where you have all these kids sitting at home, that's going to be a huge change in just media in general.
Oh, it's just like the virus. Everything that's happening right now actually happened like 14 days ago. Like,
Exactly. That part of it excites me as much as it's a kind of a drag having to have everybody in the house all the time, especially when you have a big family like mine. The creatives, the creations that are coming out of this is an opportunity for so many people to try their hand at podcasting that either are new at podcasting or have been thinking, man, if I had time, I could change the way the standard podcast format and do this and do that. And 5-10 years from now, it's going to be a totally different space. And you can be able to point back to right here, this period right now when people actually had time to really get into it and see what was up.
So I've got an interesting twist on that story. I think you're right, Amos. I really think you are. Necessity is the mother of invention a lot of times. I've got a client who is a subject matter expert in a topic really dear to my heart. And we've been trying literally for like the last 17 months to get a podcast going. The problem is when companies like, Deutsches Bundesbank and all these other groups pay you to come speak, the podcast goes down to the bottom of the line.
Mm-hmm.
And her next 21 speaking engagements have been canceled. Her next 21 projects have been canceled. She's at home, bored out of her mind, and send her a mic. And actually tomorrow we're getting on Squadcast and we're going to start recording some stuff and we're going to see what comes out of the other side. And my prediction is that this podcast is going to explode. And my prediction is that she's at an age right now where she's going to go, all these people reached on the podcast and I don't have to get on an airplane anymore.
Right. I mean, 1,000 people in a room versus like 1,000 downloads is probably going to be like just where she starts.
Yeah. And she's got, she's doing well when I had to sign an NDA to the list of people that she's going to get to promote this podcast when it finally comes out, but I think what's going to happen is I think people are going to be able to consume it on their speed. She doesn't have the 45-minute keynote model that she normally has, or the 5-day continuing education program. She can actually talk to what's in the heart and what's on this topic. And I think it's gonna be fantastic. I think we're going to see some stuff from here.
And that'll be really great because she's already got that live presentation experience. So when she does things online, if she does a live webcast or whatever else, it's going to translate almost directly.
Yeah.
And that's going to be...
Can I tell a webcast story? I haven't been on the show since this webcast story. I think this is huge. I think this is really key. I think this one is telling. Mark from Marketing Companion podcast. Anybody know this one?
Mm-hmm.
Mark Schaefer. Brilliant. I love Mark. Mark was the first guy. One of the first, get up, let's go live. Let's talk about what COVID means. And so he gets up live and he said something that has marked my entire experience and what I'm thinking about COVID. Everybody said, how do you make money in COVID? How do you market in COVID? How do you do all these things in COVID? And Mark said, guys, we're at a funeral. Some people are literally mourning lives. Other people are mourning their way of lives. Other people are mourning their freedoms. Other people are mourning, all sorts of things. At a funeral, you never hand out a coupon. Nobody ever asks how to sell at a funeral.
Mortician might be.
Yeah, a funeral, you put your arm around somebody and say, "How can I help?"
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we look at COVID. So anyway, so I love the webcast. Now, here's the funny thing. Have I talked about this one on the show? I haven't, right? No, good. So it's Facebook, and so it was painful to listen to. Now on his desk, I can see it because it's a webcam, is the microphone I know he uses for his podcast.
Right.
So after it, I said, Mark, that was great. You have framed my thought process on this. You are an amazing man. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me know when the podcast is released because I am going to promote the hell out of this. Awkward pause. I didn't record the podcast version of this. You know what? He went live because that's what all the cool kids do.
Right.
And the funny thing is I know his numbers, and I could look at his Facebook numbers. His podcast would have reached a gazillion more people,
right?
Give or take,
right?
Would have reached a lot more people if he had done the podcast, but because he got all sexy with what's live, and he's since been doing more podcasting and that kind of thing. But what's interesting is, I think we're going to see some people who are truly reaching. I mean, Amos, you got 6 kids at home. You can't do anything live. The fact that you're on this is amazing. That and a locked door.
Yeah, the door's locked.
But
a locked door and remote rope lights that are red all through the house, letting people know that I'm recording.
But you're one of the few
Nice.
who can pull. You're one of the few who can pull this up. But a podcast we can do. So I think what's going to happen with this gal, we're not going to do webcasts. We're recording tomorrow. We're going to record the first episode. We're going to see what happens. But this anytime, any place, anywhere production model for her is going to be just as valuable as the anytime, any place consumption model for her audience. And I think this is one of the real victories that's going to come out of it. Now, what's interesting about Mark, and I'm not sharing anything not public. Mark actually came down with COVID, and right now he's dealing with it on his Facebook page, and he's got a lot of fans, and he's on the other side, and he's going to be fine. But it's really interesting that this chance to reach people is still there, but gets a bit distracting. It's an interesting thing. And I would just encourage all the podcasters to not be, this tech works. Right. As cool as this live thing is, more people are going to download this than are going to watch this on YouTube. Yeah, I'm guessing, Ray, unless we've done no marketing at all.
You can't see podcast numbers. You can certainly see the YouTube numbers. And
right.
I can promise you that every YouTube view of this is eclipsed in the audio only. And of course, the only reason we do, honestly, the only reason we are recording a podcast,
right?
It just, the software happens to let us push it live to YouTube. Otherwise, I would not be doing live. I don't care about talking head. Like, it's not, I'm not doing it for the video.
Especially these heads.
Especially these heads. It's just that this lets us connect easily. And this started with Google Hangouts, right? But this is the point, is to record an audio podcast together.
Bingo. And that's what I think some podcasters are even forgetting right now.
Also, all those who love gear, which if you're listening to this, you do, I guarantee it, because that's our audience. Look, Dave is holding up something. I assume it's new gear that hasn't been opened yet.
Yeah, it hasn't been opened yet.
What is it?
It's a tablet that when I plug it in, so when I do webinars, like, everybody's doing, I used to go to the white screen and then you try to draw with your mouse and it looks like stick figure theater. Yeah. This it's a little pen and a tablet, and I can now draw on the screen, and it'll still look like stick figure theater, but a little more.
To watch Dave drawing, tune in live. It's going to be amazing. But just to mention that, hey, I'm capturing this in real time, meaning that I am recording what is being broadcast live. So I am getting the best audio quality we're going to get. If you listen to the Roundtable, it is not a production workflow that I would recommend to anyone who was serious and came to me. I'd be multi-track and everyone's got their own microphone, all this stuff, right? But if everyone here, because they're podcasters, shows up generally with decent audio. Amos came back because he's got really good audio. But capturing it live the way I'm doing. So with the Rodecaster Pro, I'm able to basically capture everything that's coming in from USB, which is Paul, Amos, and Dave. And I'm on my own channel because I'm here locally capturing it. But the Roundtable sounds fantastic. So we probably have a little bit of noise cancellation. I mean, you guys all have great microphones, so it's doing its own job there. But even with all of you on one track, I bet most people would never listen to Roundtable and not know that you guys didn't just send me your like double ender audio. So capture in real time, because when it's streaming, we're getting at least 96, probably 128 kilobits per second easily. And it sounds great. Now, we're using the recording. So the StreamYard that's going to YouTube, if this crashes, if my SD card breaks, I just go download that file and rip the audio out. We are totally fine for an emergency situation, right? Yeah. So just a little tip and a little behind the scenes of what's going on right now. If you capture it while you're recording it, you'll get better quality than ripping it out of the stream. Yep. And in Mark's case there, he could go and rip that. He didn't record, but he could go rip the audio out of that live recording.
Right, because that particular audio was so bad that you
which was a separate issue.
Yeah, it would be acceptable on a live Facebook, but it would not be acceptable on a podcast.
Right. He didn't employ the gear that he has, which is problem number 2 of not recording.
and it was fun because a couple days later, Tom Webster did the podcast Infinite Dial
podcast report.
And it was funny because I love the Infinite Dial. It's my Super Bowl of the year. But Tom said something like, if you want to experience this as a podcast, close your eyes. And then I tweeted out, well, no, if you want to experience this as a podcast, it could sound better.
Yeah.
Because if Tom had done it on an $80 microphone, it would have sounded better than the GoToWebinar kind of situation.
Yeah.
Now Mark needs to do it live, and there's all the ad side of all. I'm sorry, Tom had to do all that live. Right. Tom and Mark are partners on the old show. But yeah, and if you really want to look at something that's really interesting, I would recommend this highly. Last week's, and of course the date, what's this episode recorded? Friday, April 17th. So whatever days ago, they tried to do Saturday Night Live by Zoom, and it was still funny. And for those of you listening to the podcast, I'm doing the air quotes. It was still funny, but the problem was they didn't have the live audience.
Mm-hmm.
They also didn't have, and I didn't realize this. Kate McKinnon, I think is did a thing on Ruth Gator Ginsburg, and she didn't have the robe on and the wigs and everything like that. Costume. And that didn't really work as well without the costume. And I was like,
Yeah. But what's interesting is watch Weekend Update, because the Weekend Update segment, they're used to bouncing off of each other, right? Which they could do a little bit on Zoom, but they needed an audience. When they tried it the first time, it was so bad that they invited some friends to listen to them do it, but they invited like 6 or 7. So there's those awkward laughs in the background, and just power this live. If the 4 of us just all, called on a bridge line and then just did, a quadruple ender or whatever this is, knowing this is live, looking at Eric, looking at Mike, looking at Roman in the chat, gives us a certain energy that you're not going to get otherwise. So Ray's grabbing the smartest audio, but we're also grabbing the highest energy format, and that's the combo that makes Podcasters Roundtable the runaway success hit that it is.
That's right. Which is funny because as you're stating this, the audio is just taking a complete dive on my end. So like people are going to be hearing like that. So, right. Not perfect, but hey, don't let it stop you, right? Don't let it stop. It doesn't stop us. We record and get it out. It's good stuff. So yeah, 100%. All right. Well, I think, Dave, did you have, Paul, I don't see any stories. We don't need any more stories, but you did your discovery. Dave's rant on Podcry. I mean, is that really a service that's going to be here in 2 days? Do we need to?
Probably not. If I can find, I got too many screens going. I'm trying to find the Roundtable again. I wanted to share my screen and I've got too many things open. What it is I think everybody started some of this stuff because they thought it would be ready by Podcast Movement. So they started making these new features and such. Right. And the problem is that they are now approaching, in my case, me, and they really would like to pick my brain, to which I've been reminding people, I have a name for that. It's called consulting. Yeah. And so I've had some people actually like, okay, yeah, we'll pay to get your opinion. But then there are sites like Podcross. Now, Podcross, I got an email that I didn't ask for that said, hey, it's a way to promote your show on other shows. And I was like, okay, cool. And then you go to it and it's got, It's got two people standing on a bridge, so you kind of get the tied in. It's connecting people on a bridge. Got
It's
it.
not photography that they didn't pay attention to.
Right. And then it's how it works. It's a tool for podcast producers to advertise and market their shows on other targeted podcasts. So the audience here is podcasters. So the first thing they got to realize is we're going to okay, how? Like, are you injecting into my feed, or what's the detail? You can become a pro. Give me your email address, blah, blah, blah. We've got big partners. Great. Up here in the corner, it's join for free. But who is this besides the bottom? Is this Audio Boom and Acast and Dax and Megaphone? It's
Paul's on the board, so he can tell us.
Yeah. So it's just one of those where I'm and the other thing is, if it's a software program, for the love of God, make a demo video. That drives me nuts. I'm I want to see it. I don't want to have to download and play with it. Let me see what it does first, and then I'll decide if it's cool enough to download and play with. So,
so they are a sponsor here because Dave just got booted from the stream. I mean, literally mid-sentence, he just got kicked out.
For the record, if you're going to have a photo that's that abstract as two people meeting on a bridge,
it's a cool bridge. It's Indiana Jones bridge.
But the problem is that bridge, I don't like shady bridges, and that was giving me anxiety. Just I'm not going to use that service.
That's seconds before they plummeted to their death.
Now, is that the company you're talking about, or the people on the bridge?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Okay.
All of it.
So anyway, Dave,
I keep what I didn't tell you is podcast actually sponsored this episode, so I had to kick you out, dude.
But I keep getting lots of, hey, can you take a look at this and let me know what you think?
Yes.
And I'm just I go there and I'm no about page, come on, and I guess the front page is their about page. To me, I just was okay, interesting idea. It sounds,
better.
okay.
You want to talk to Dave, be better. Come on.
Yeah, come on. So that was my rant.
I get a lot of junk too. It's funny as you become a creator and you're out there more, and you grow, you get approached. You get approached from a lot of junk. My YouTube channel, I do gear at least twice a week. I turn down stuff that is just clearly garbage. It's, hey, YouTuber, we love your channel. That's how it always starts. Something crazy, right? No specifics. Instant trash. And in the beginning, you feel like you got to respond. You're oh, they're noticing me. I got to respond. No, there's so much spam and junk. And this will happen to you as a podcaster too, probably, if you start to, stand out in a niche. People might approach you, and I would be real cautious with what you're willing to trade your audience for, right? A piece of free gear, is it really? I mean, the fact that I just said their name as a joke sponsor on this podcast, it was more promo than I actually would have want to give them, right? There are people typing it in right now to check out the service, so you're welcome. We'll take our money. Send it to Dave.
Yeah, for the record, I was not paid for that placement.
No, clearly you were not paid.
Yeah,
clearly, genius marketing. By the way.
Dave, I want you to go on and talk about how much you hate us,
dude. People love this.
Can I ask about a tech that is intriguing?
Yeah.
That I'd love your all's thoughts on. You guys looked at the script yet?
Yes, I love it,
man.
What is
this thing?
Oh wait, so now should we get a sponsorship first?
Yeah, exactly.
What is it?
I remember when
Ray, isn't this how you get sponsorships? Just by talking about stuff and hoping they come to you?
Yeah. When I first saw it, I was great idea, never going to work. And it seemed it was Mac only. And I actually subscribe to it now. And my favorite thing is I let it do the little transcription thingy. I look for the first I right click on it and go filler words, delete. And then I listen to the thing about 3/4 the way through, waiting to find the bad edit. And about that time, I'm I got other things to do. If it's a bad edit, it's 40 minutes into an hour-long podcast.
Is this editing by text thing or something? What is that we're talking about?
Yeah,
I'm not really into it, but I'm sure it's probably magic.
Paul, what do you think?
I am just blown away by it. I am so impressed by it. And
what do you like? What does it do for you?
Well, so I'm all about workflow. Different people should be doing different things. Okay. So one of the things it does is it'll do an AI-based transcription. A lot of people do that. What's interesting is they'll do as much as you want over the course. What was that?
transcription? Is it worth it? Do you have your clients do transcripts?
Well, let's chat about that for a second. It does the transcript, but then it has the filler words, so you can have it find all the ums, and then it does the Microsoft thing with the squiggly line under the ums.
But what's interesting, you don't want to get rid of all the ums though. That's
follow with me here.
All right.
So it does the transcript, and then you can. A lot of times in the show, one of the formats that people do is you find a segment mid-show, 20 seconds, and then when you put that at the beginning, you can literally copy that part, bring that up at the top, repaste it, you're good to go. If somebody says, "Oh, I forgot to add this," you can delete that part, remove it, and you could do some basic editing by text. And I do want to stress basic editing by text, but what's interesting, then it exports to an Audition file. An Audition project.
Got it.
So now I can have, one person in the team bring in the file, line everything up, look at the ums and ahs, take out the big, we do the 3-clap edit thing, take it out, prepare the project for the person to go in to make it really sexy in Audition.
Right.
And so it works there quite well. But the thing that's interesting is the next phase of this, and I spent a little time with the CEO at Podcast Movement. The next interesting phase of this is you give it 10 minutes of your voice and it learns your voice.
Yeah.
And then, if you got it, which is terrifying and cool at the exact same time.
Right, it's gonna...
But the thing is, like if you said something in the podcast wrong, like the sale ends April 31st and you meant May 31st, you can go in, you can select April, replace it with the computerized May, and nobody will know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is value for sure.
And it's and what's just interesting about it is it brings AI into the editing process, and AI is going to be part of the editing process, whether we like it or not.
Now, so I'm a little scared.
It's going to be part of the editing process, buddy. Whether we like it or not. And this gives us some really, really interesting control, but then it's not entirely like the problem is you have these systems like Ferrite on the iPad is a beautiful, but it's closed. Like I either have to embrace Ferrite for the rest of my life or reject it. And what's cool about the script is when it's done, it makes the Audition project. It makes the Logic project.
Right.
And so I think that combo is really, really interesting. Yeah. And so now we've got internally, we've got one person taking the files, running through it, taking out the ums and ahs for people who want that, and then exporting to the Audition project that then goes to the Dropbox of the editor who does that. And so it speeds up that initial flow. And I think it's our first look. Will they be the ones who win? A lot of times somebody comes up with something and then somebody comes and makes it better. Right. So, but it's worth a try. And Dave, you said in the chat they have a trial period. They do have a trial period, but one of the things that isn't in the trial is the exporting to the other platforms. So you can't do the Audition project as
the concept is like, hey, this works, right? Like,
what's cool though, because I use Hindenburg, I export to a WAV file and it asked me if it would like it to be normalized to whatever LUFS.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that was pretty cool. That was very auphonic of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty cool.
It's just, it's a really, really interesting, situation. And then Roman's talk about, read the terms about say something you never said. That's a little bit too much fun. Roman, the CEO said the text there, the problem is how do we track all this? And how do we get permission? What's funny is like Virtual Paul is going to be easy to get, but like I got the clients who are ready to sign up right now to fix those little gaffes. They don't have to do pickups. And, but the problem is how do I get a client in Florida to verify that their voice for the pickup? It's interesting. I'm really, really intrigued by it.
That was going to be my question, because I've had clients that do an hour-long interview and then want to make it a narration style show with different clips of the interview.
Right.
But I've had to put the brakes on because no, you're changing the context and the meaning behind what this interviewee said, because you're reframing your question in such a way to and I've had to know that I'm not doing that as an editor.
You do all the time though. I mean, that is like
right,
you hear
but
all the time, like people take out sound, they narrate the story and then interject the clip to sort of prove the point.
Right. And I won't do that, but if you can just go in there and literally change the words,
Yeah.
I was to I wasn't.
I'm
Yeah.
super excited for AI Paul to kill Paul and just take over the show.
Well, I think more episodes would come out if AI actually kicked in.
I'm
so
not
there's that
actually
issue.
excited for you to be killed. By the way,
Yeah,
Paul. You know what I mean. I just got pushed out. It's more of a hostile takeover. That's what I'm thinking.
There we
the
go.
Podcast report.
No, it's an interesting. It's part of our future, and what's going to be interesting is have a good storyteller look at the transcript and find the story elements and build. What you're saying, Amos, is definitely true. We can take people out of context, but if we had a good storyteller actually take the segments, put together the Hindenburg Project to write, the pre-questions to tell the grander story. There's some interesting stuff here.
Yeah, and I mean, podcasting is definitely going to be made easier. That will never keep someone podcasting, we know, and it might get someone into it. Anchor is a great example. They did a cool thing by making it very easy to see if you want to do a podcast. And a lot of people saw they actually don't want to do a podcast. It turns out you got to do a lot of them over and over and over again. And that's hard, right? So no matter how easy you make podcasting. So these tools, great for someone who's committed to the project, right? To actually save some of that time. And maybe you can do more of it. You can make it better. So for that, I'm excited. As a producer, I mean, it sounds like Amos, you do editing. I mean, I can take more clients if I make this easier, right? There's more of me to extend if I can give the bot some work.
Well,
exactly.
For me, the show I do on Saturday morning, it's me and Jim Collison. And the problem is I'm multitasking. So I'm looking at the chat room while I'm playing sound effects and I'm getting ready with my PowerPoint because we're going to do this and that. So, and when you put Dave in that situation, exactly. And my favorite phrase.
I got sound effects now. I forgot. Hold on.
That's right.
Oh, no. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, that's it. Dueling sound effect. So, but when I do that, my favorite word is "and dumb." So I'll be talking about something, and it's kind of like here it is. Oh, so and so, and I'm just like, I listened back, and it was so cool to go in and say, highlight these two words, get rid of, and it just went poof, and I was like,
they search and replace for your website. Except now we've just moved into podcast.
Yeah,
search and replace all and ums with blank.
Yeah, so I could have used this earlier.
And now it's time for a power rant.
Totally forgot I had that.
Yeah, power rant. Oh yeah, you missed it. You missed the mark. I think it is like literally your only job on the show, but that's all right.
It.
You already lost your paycheck to this week. So
that's it.
Amos, we should have known Amos had been here. He hid behind the goatee. So I'm not gonna buying it. And he got lucky. I didn't cross him off. So when I go back into the giant Google Doc of people who've been here, you get crossed off if you've been on. And unless there's like a note that says never invite this person back again, the crossed offs can still come back. That means they were here and they're good. By the way, no one has that notation. I do check if you have submitted, and I admit that. Thank you, everyone. So podcastersroundtable.com/guest. If you've submitted to be on the roundtable, a lot of those get passed by. We don't do enough of them and get enough people on. And sometimes I'm pulling people from like 2 years ago submission. If you've pod faded, you're usually hard to reach. So sometimes that doesn't make it on, that gets crossed off. But in general, most people, just because you've been on doesn't mean you're not eligible to be back on. So do sign up there, podcastersroundtable.com/guest. We're going to head out. You're going to tell us where we can find your podcast because everyone has loved your opinions today and they're going to find more. And that's what we're going to do. Dave Jackson, thanks for, your job was, you had 2 jobs today.
And I blew it on both. That's it.
We have to pay someone for that. Stop making that.
This one? Yeah, okay. Quit doing that.
Coming out of the paycheck you're not getting.
That's it. Dave Jackson, School of Podcasting.com.
Paul Colligan, thanks again, man.
Thank you. Paul Colligan, the podcast partnership. Part of this weekend, I am editing the pilot episode of my new show. So agingtechshow.com. It isn't released. The domain will take you to a Twitter account at this point, but very soon, Aging Tech Show is going to be an interesting play out there.
Is it about MySpace or is it about you getting old? Don't know.
Funny thing is, it's about both. We're actually looking at tech that is aged as well as tech that's helping us age, and that's kind of
there's a co-host,
double entendre, if you will.
All right, co-host included. You want to tell us who's going to? You can't reveal that. We have to go to the show to find out.
There will be Hold on. It's going to be fun. It's going to be. Right. I'm mashing up a few genres, if you will. And
look, I've looked at the podcast, Apple Podcast stat. No one listens 55 minutes in, Paul. So you're not revealing.
That's true. No, we're going to play. No, actually, I am going to do the. We're going to do the challenge show model for a lot of these. So we're going to take, guys getting older and, taking on a piece of tech for a couple of weeks, and then I'll report back in on how it did, and then give thumbs up, thumbs down to does this tech really help us age better? And I think we're gonna have fun with that.
Women, you're gonna have all kinds of guests, right? Like
all kinds of guests. It's just a lot of it's going to be dudes. A lot of it's going to be dudes, and a lot of the topics are dude related, and I think it's gonna be fun. But episode 1 is about remote video conferencing with elderly parents who are not at the point where they can even click the pick up the iPad button on video conferencing. So how do you do that when you can't necessarily chat with them? So it's an interesting game I'm playing.
All right. Stay tuned. I committed the deadly sin in podcasting where I basically cued that we were done. And I said,
yes,
out of here. The drop off in Apple Podcast just hit the floor. But if you're still watching, sorry, Amos, I burned all your promo. Amos, where can we find your show, man?
If you'd like to celebrate all things geek, cruise on over to ritualmisery.com. We go live every Thursday-ish.
I got to stop him. You just did a pet peeve of mine. I'm sorry.
Oh,
wrong button. What was your website again?
Ritualmisery.com.
Ritual or virtual?
Ritual.
Okay. Because the first time you said that, if you go back and listen, you said that very fast. And I don't know why we do that. I'm guilty of that as well. Where it'll be like, oh yeah, just come see me school podcasting out. And I'm like, I don't know if we're all just like, I don't want to self-promote. I don't want to be weird. And so we just like, it's just
said it a lot. It's second nature to us, right?
Yeah. And so when you did that, I was like, oh, I got to stop him because I was like, I want to go to your website and I have no idea what you just said.
All right, I need to say it really slow.
Yeah.
Ritualmisery.com.
I hope you have all the misspellings for that. No one's ritual. Is that TIR? Yeah, that's not happening. Awesome. The good news
thank
is
you, sir.
Said it like 5 times in the last 10 seconds. That's worth at least 1 extra click, I think.
There you go.
And where do we find you, Ray?
Right here. I never leave. I'm in this box. I just wait for people to show up and fill up the little squares. Okay, so podcastersroundtable.com. I'm just sitting on the live page waiting. Check us out. We'll see you next
time. And to speak to Dave's question, especially at the end of all this,
really going.
Ray, where do we get you? If we want to be on the show, where do we go? Because you said that one really fast.
Podcastersroundtable.com/guest. That work? All right,
Ray. One more. I'm going to add something real quick.
Yes,
because this is my second time on the show. Even if you only remembered one,
it's true. Both true.
You've got to get my friend Richard Gunther on the show.
I know Richard Gunther. I mean, I've seen the name. I've seen Richard around this community forever.
Yes, but only because every time I say I'm going to be on here, he gives me the hardest time because your schedules never link up. So if I don't mention it,
but I've probably invited him. I hope I've. Okay, good. All right.
Is it Richard Gunther?
Richard Gunther.
I guarantee you'll if you just search your email, Dave, you probably run into him.
Well, it's even
been a long time. Like and
he's cool enough to have 2 first names.
That is 2 first names. That's pretty good.
That's awesome.
Oh,
so Dave Jackson.
Dave Jackson.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I can't do it with mine. All right, neither can Paul. We need to leave.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Podcast Roundtable. Wave goodbye. I'm gonna find all the stop buttons. And
all the buttons.
You're gonna break I actually don't know where the stop button. Oh, am I watching live? What's going on here?
Don't forget to close the app.
We're still live. Oh, we lost him.
Oh, he hung himself up.
He did. He hit the wrong button. He hit leave or whatever, he can come back in. We're still live. That's the fun thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I was hoping you guys were still waving. Here,
Where'd it go?
I was about to start going into
StreamYard
the spiel.
Oh, that's what happened. I put the window over so it'd be behind my webcam, and I hid the in broadcast button. But I found Leave Studio. That worked.
Yeah.
Bye.